They used to steal our credit card information and still do, but many online thieves are finding it much more lucrative and in some cases easier to hack into corporate software systems and demand ransom money. According to an FBI report out this year, from January to July, they have received more than 2,000 ransomware complaints with more than $16 million in losses. That's a 20% increase in reported losses compared to the same time frame last year. Dr. Ed Peters is a nationally recognized cybersecurity expert who joins us to talk about how serious and prevalent this is becoming. Dr. Peters, these are not small-time crooks. Talk about what it is that officials know about some of these operations and how they get into intricate computer systems.
Well, first of all, these are sophisticated criminal networks today. We all have a vision of a few people sitting in a dark room, sitting around a computer screen that looks all green and things are moving like we see in the Matrix. Well, that's no longer the case. This is a case today where one group may be access brokers, where they look at lists of people and names that they verified with passwords that were stolen. They then sell those on the dark web to another group or somebody who's looking to actually break into accounts and has an algorithm then that can be used once they've broken into the account to be able to infect the system with a ransomware demand, and followed by another group that's really clever in how to write copy that will convince you to actually pay the ransom and then find a way to allow you to somehow launder that money on the dark web. All of these things work in conjunction. They call it outsourced ransomware or cybersecurity or cyber criminals outsourcing things to each other. And what happens is it's all a time box situation where they pressure you to make a decision quickly, and then they're hoping that you haven't taken the necessary steps to be able to counteract it.
Dr. Peters, the ones that have made the news are the ones demanding, millions and millions of dollars from major companies. I think the last one we did was an oil company. Then they pay the ransom. They do it quietly. Are these thieves kind of honing in on a specific industry where they can get the most money, or is it just all across the board?
Well, it's really across the board, but obviously, the more sophisticated criminals look for the big payoff. And usually they may have inside information or something about what they expect to happen once they launch the attack. Now, there's 4 parts of this attack to think about. One is when they break through the firewall or your ransomware protection, and they're betting that they can do that, or they've tried it and they bought the access from somebody who's proven that it works. And people are running this all day long trying to break in. So once they have broken through the barrier, now there's 3 other steps. One is, we call it the identification step. Can we identify and alert very quickly that this attack is underway inside your environment? Next, we want to limit the scope of the attack, find the infected areas, shut them down, and then the third area then, once we're past that, is recovery. So all 4 areas, and they're betting that you haven't put in all 4 steps in the process that will allow you to say, walk away, there's no reason for you to do this, and pay this ransom. And because we have all 4 steps in place and can recover. And that's what they're betting. And if you notice, a lot of the attacks are against government organizations, such as county governments, school boards, where they believe that they may have virus protection, but they don't have the other 3 steps in place. And what we see is that customers that work with us, because we specialize in the other 3 areas for getting to recovery within days or even hours, what happens is there's no money there. So I always tell people, Willie Sutton, the famous bank robber, allegedly said, when asked why you rob banks, that's where the money is. Well, if there's no reward for the attack, they go away. but they're betting there's a lot of other people out there you can do this with, and that's what's happening.
Hey, Dr. Peters, if I can get you to hang with me just a couple of minutes. I have to take a break. I want to come back and talk about the government side of this. As we know, our elections are very vulnerable, and we're talking about cybersecurity. So can you give me just 2 minutes?
Yes, of course.
All right, we'll be right back. Continuing my conversation now with Dr. Ed Peters, who is a cybersecurity expert, works for a company that helps other companies from becoming ransomware victims as well as cybersecurity victims. And we talk a lot more about this, Dr. Peters, in the news because it's becoming so much more prevalent. But before the break, I said that I wanted to talk about the government entities that are hacked into. Our elections are especially vulnerable. Do these government agencies come to you? I know that they have some of the best cybersecurity personnel working for them, but do they go to outside companies like yours?
Well, our specialty is actually data management and storage in an environment that permits what I discussed regarding rapid recovery and alerting in case of an attack. And a number of government organizations do work with us. For instance, the Department of Justice stores all of its case data on Penzora. And other both agencies and some government agencies do this as well. And some both school boards and local governments use our software.
Let's talk about these hackers, the countries of origin. I know with past elections, we've talked a lot about Russian hackers. Is that the case? Are we finding that these hackers are here in the United States, or are they usually in other countries?
Well, it's hard to know on any one attack. We believe they're in other countries, and some could be here. And as I mentioned frequently, that trying to just shut down websites from what are alleged hacking groups is really like playing whack-a-mole. What happens is the minute you shut down one, another pops up. Or in the last instance, there was a lot of talk about how the governments, the FBI and other agencies may have actually shut down one of the most notorious groups that's called Revil, which is a Russian based group, or so what was believed. But they say they got into their website and they shut them down and they hacked them. But then again, nobody was apprehended and nothing was ever said that they were stopped. That instance was stopped, but they're notorious for popping up somewhere else. So unless they shut down and people are apprehended, this is going to keep continuing.
And
but I really
can.
Yes.
Good. No, you go ahead.
The best thing to do, or one of the best things to do, is to ensure that there's no reason to rob a bank if there's no money there.
Okay, so that brings up a good point, though, about once they're apprehended and how hard it is to apprehend them. Is it maybe that our penalties are not tough enough because they keep popping up? When they do get caught, they're not, are they held accountable to the point where they wouldn't want to do it again? Doesn't sound like it.
Well, right now, they've not apprehended anybody for this. Any of these international rings, they could be in countries that are beyond our reach. They could be in countries that are friendly to them. Remember, even if you ransomware some cash, usually they have it be paid in Bitcoin or some cryptocurrency, and somehow you have to have a way to redeem that currency in some exchange. Now, the way the pipeline people were caught was they exchanged some of it in what was a public exchange, and that's where they caught them. Now, if you go to an exchange that's on the dark web in Russia, there's no way that you're going to be able to really catch them or do anything with it because, one, it's in a territory that may or may not be Russia or some other place where you could actually effectively enforce the law. And then lastly, once you shut that down, as I mentioned before, it's easy to pop back up somewhere else under a different name or even under the same name on a different server in another territory.
Okay, so we've been focusing on more of these elaborate, large-scale crimes. Let's scale it back and talk about the smaller businesses. I have small business owners who watch nightly, and they're the ones who they're targeted as well, maybe not on this kind of scale, but they're targeted. And when you say the best way to keep from an attacker from coming to you and coming after you is to not have that kind of money available to them, what do you mean by that? And how do these small businesses know, how to keep their money from what you're talking about?
Well, it's not just the money, it's the data. They
Yeah.
get your data and make you ransom your data back. But the way to do this for anyone or any business is just start with the basics. Firstly, have a firewall and have security virus protection software and keep it up to date, as well as keeping all of your system software up to date. Because a lot of times that has changes in it that are specific to security at all times. Secondly, do things that are inconvenient. And security, unfortunately, is inconvenient. For instance, two-factor authentication. I find that annoying, but so would any cyber criminal. The fact is that if I try to log in and then I have to go to my cell phone, find the code and put that in, that slows the whole process down and enters a piece of data that only I have and the person that sent it to me, not easy to be hacked. Third, use strong passwords. And the ones none of us like, but something that can't really be easily identified. And the number of smart devices you have on your network in a business or in your home. Make sure that you go in and change the passwords on all of those. You would be shocked to know how many people have smart devices and the password is simply password because they never went in and changed it from what the manufacturer said. So all these things, as well as the most important, never clicking on anything that you don't understand the origin and anything that looks like it's time compressed. You must do this right now. There's a problem with your account. I always say never trust, always verify. Always pick up the phone, call that institution from the number you know, not the one they give you on the screen. Call them on the phone, ask them, is this legitimate? I just had something sent to me from a friend of mine where it said his company was performing random background checks and it looked like it came from his company.
And we've heard it so many times and people still do it.
I know. Never share passwords. Never use the same password for multiple accounts. That's called credential stuffing. What happens is when somebody finds or one of these access brokers finds that you use that name and password pair, they'll go try it on everything you have, betting that that's what you're doing.
Dr. Peters, this is great information, and I do appreciate it. And it's good, even if it's stuff that some people, we've heard a million times. It's good to hear again because we still do things we're not supposed to, especially online. I appreciate your time. We'll put a link to Panzora with this interview on our website. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and have a great holiday.